Welcome to the S.O.S podcast. Remember, don't drown to see a transition. Grab the vet S.O.S Lifeline. This week, we're sitting down with an organization that supports veterans' mental health across the country and just doing great things for our community. So, looking forward to getting into this one. So, stay tuned and take notes. I'm sitting here with the newest contestant on So You Think You Can Dance. He's popping and locking his way into our hearts. How you doing today, Keith?
I'm doing good. Just trying not to pull a hammy, especially on a live podcast. And at this age, I think I'm going to stick strictly to upper body dancing at this point. But no, it's good to be here as always, Sean. How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic, and honestly, I kind of missed the intro music and watching you dance while
I
while it
was dancing
plays.
my
And
way in. Yeah, we
yeah,
probably
well,
cut
yeah.
that out. But yeah,
Yeah, we have to bring that back. It creates the tone for the whole show.
exactly.
All right, Dave's over here going, "What? I thought
What in
this
the
was like
world?
somewhat professional. What are we doing
No,
here?"
not at all.
All right, let's jump in here. We're sitting down. Um, excuse me, and can't even breathe anymore. We're sitting down with David Howe. Dave's dual career blends 30 years in the U.S. Army with over 30 years in the civilian sector. His military service began with 11 years on active duty, including assignments in the 4th Infantry Division and the 82nd Airborne Division. After transitioning from the regular Army to the reserves, Dave started his civilian career as a healthcare administrator and professional services consultant. Over the past 3 decades, Dave's served in senior positions in several Fortune 100 companies, including Deloitte Consulting. His background includes strategic and operational planning, business development, and revenue optimization, including generating numerous millionaires. Highlights of his career include generating billions of dollars in revenue, providing state-of-the-art technology-based consulting solutions, and strategic and operational planning to create wealth. Dave's commitment to giving back is exemplified by activities ranging from coaching his children's youth sports to joining the Comfort, Peace, and Freedom Foundation to assist the families of the fallen heroes. Additionally, Dave is bringing the power of life planning to individuals and companies while simultaneously working for the foundation. You've had quite the career, quite the life, and tons of experience in so many different worlds. And if you're still making millionaires, my new best friend, Dave, I'd like to welcome you to the show. How you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. Thanks for this opportunity of talking about, amongst other things, how the power of strategic life planning can be a tremendous aid to everybody, but particularly to those that are at that critical milestone of transitioning out of military life into being a 100% civilian. So there is tremendous life after taking your uniform off for the last time, but it does require a plan to make it. A little less challenging and in some cases, unfortunately, painful for some of our brothers and sisters in arms.
Absolutely. And you're 100% correct. It's once you get through it or, have yourself a plan and work through it, life on the other side's nice. It's something we should all live for. But anyway, let's jump into your transition story. You had a 30-year career. So, tell us how the transition out of the military went.
In a way, because I went from the regular army to the reserves, I actually had two transitions. Obviously, the most dramatic and the one that's probably of greatest interest because of it is the most challenging is going from wearing a uniform 24/7 to suddenly not, and all that goes along with that. Um, I was blessed in my transition. I had just finished my master's in healthcare. So, and I was about midway through, obviously, a 20-year career of active duty. So I was poised for entering into the civilian sector. I was the right age. I had a good skill set. So there were a lot of advantages that I had that many of our, fellow warriors may not have, or at least they don't perceive that they have that kind of an advantage. So, but it still took me almost a year because I needed to finish up my master's thesis, and I really wanted to make sure I made the right decision rather than just a decision. Because once you make a decision, it tends to commit you geographically, your path and so on. And so if you choose poorly, you may be paying a premium trying to get yourself back onto the right path. So I do encourage people that build up a nest egg so you don't have to take the first thing that comes along and avoid making a bad decision out of, in many cases, an undue sense of urgency to figure out what you're going to do next. And then obviously fast forward to that last day that I was allowed to wear the uniform because you hit mandatory retirement at some point. Um, that was a much softer transition, but in some ways, psychologically, it was far more challenging because it was taking the uniform off for the last time rather than going from active duty to the reserves. I was still obviously able to continue to serve and enjoyed being around fellow warriors and doing really fun stuff. And um, when you finally have to hang it up, there is another transition that goes along, even if you've accomplished most of the other things that people associate with transitioning from the military, mostly focused on job or location or whatever. Um, but fortunately, that has gone very well, and in a way, my working with the Comfort, Peace, and Freedom Foundation is the ideal capstone for both the military service as well as my consulting background to be the perfect way for me to go through however many more days I get to have on this earth, and in many ways continuing to give back to uh, the veteran and military community. So, um, long-winded way of saying my transition was like many, the majority have good positive stories. Unfortunately, there are way too many that are in a struggle mode, and some end up in really, really dark places. So again, the concept of having a plan well before you take your uniform off and leave the post for the last time really is something that I hope will resonate with everybody, and particularly for those that may be sort of feeling like they're running up to the edge of the cliff and they don't have a plan for that.
No, having a plan, I think, is crucial. And it sounds like you had a great plan when you transitioned the first time to the reserves. And so once you got to the end of your reserve time, you were already in your career, right? So
Yep.
you kind of your plan was working still. Um, what recommendations would you give to people to maybe try to, I don't know if anticipate's the right word, but maybe mitigate some of those emotional feelings and stuff that wind up creeping in. When you did that second transition, the final transition out of the military, you know, eh, the emotional side sounds like it creeped its way back in,
Oh
and
yeah.
it actually impacted you. So, what kind of recommendations would you give for people to try to mitigate that and anticipate what's coming?
Well, is to very seriously write down to including creating a written plan for that transition and to start that as soon as you start thinking you're going to leave, you're going to ETS, you're not going to re-enlist, or you're hitting, one of those magic milestones of a 20-year career, or when you do hit a mandatory retirement at 30, um, at some point that day's coming, and the sooner you recognize roughly when that day is going to be, you can start backward planning to make sure you optimize all the time that you do have, and above all the resources. There's lots of resources out there. I mean, you get mixed reviews on the transition assistance program that the military offers as to how effective that is. It certainly contains good things, learning how to interview or create a resume or, find new housing. All those things are tactical missions that have to be accomplished successfully, or you're going to have a significant bump in the road when you do make the jump. Um, so the sooner you start planning, one is a critical thing. The other thing is to really look at your life. This is a critical milestone. So you should be looking at your whole life, not just where your next paycheck's coming from, or where do I want to live, or you get myopic on a couple of things involved in the transition that you have to accomplish. I mean, there's no question you got to figure out how you're going to make a living, where you're going to do it, who you're going to be doing it with. Um, but you need to look at those mental health, the softer aspects of the transition as well. Because if you have a holistic way of looking at the transition, then I think you're going to be doing very, very well. If you get too focused on one aspect, if that aspect goes well, you may very well do just fine without paying a lot of attention to the other aspects. But just like any tent that you set up, if you have a lot of tent poles that will support the structure, one of them can go down and it's not cataclysmic. If you have one center pole and that's it, and that goes down, everything else is going with it, and then it's very, very difficult to get yourself back on track without paying a pretty heavy price to restore stability to your life's journey.
Someone spent some time in the field.
Yeah,
I was gonna say, giving
yeah,
me flashbacks to set EP larges. Oh my god,
that's it. Yep.
cigarette
Set them
I
lighter.
all
didn't
up from pup tens on up.
I didn't
Yeah.
mind the tents. It's when we had to do the camo netting that I was just like, oh
Uh,
man. Um, now we're all having flashbacks. This is great. It's,
PTSD is kicking in on tents. So I love what you. I think the phrase you said was undue sense of urgency when we get out, and I love the fact that it's undue, right? And that, I mean, yeah, and I mean, we try to catch these service members as early as we can. We try to say at least 2 years out, but I mean, I wasn't, we don't, when we're in uniform, when we're in the service, we don't hear the, 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 the reason through the noise kind of thing. So what is Comfort, Peace, and Freedom Foundation doing to help, you know, uh, soften that blow for our service members as they come out?
Well, the Comfort, Peace, and Freedom Foundation was created by Ken Rusk just a couple of short years ago, focused exclusively on providing this life planning approach to essentially give Gold Star families a strategic plan to
Mm,
deal with that worst day of their lives. So it is a very, very focused organization on that one particular subset of our community. Um, Now, we do offer the program to everybody, not just the military or veteran community, for the whopping price of $179. So you can get the life planning program by going to his website to sign up for that, or you can even go even cheaper and buy his book, Blue Collar Cash, which lays out step by step how to create one of these life plans. So that's where those two pieces of my now current life, my commitment to the veterans and as well as leveraging my consulting skills are focused. So part of the day is working on the for-profit side because the profits from that go to fund the foundation. Ken's been incredibly successful in his day job. He doesn't need a bigger boat or more trips to Europe or whatever him and his family want to do. He's not looking to add to his bottom line. What he's looking for is his dad was a Marine and he has grown up with that sense of giving back to that group that has done so much for the country, and he really, really, really gets that. There are a lot of people who talk about it and say, thank you for your service, and I'm sure they're sincere, but he's the one who really wants to walk that talk.
that's, it's always so impressive when you meet people who truly want to help, and, because like you said, he's done well for himself. He easily could just enjoy, the money he's earned, right?
Absolutely.
But instead he's finding ways to continue to give back and help a community that is in need of help,
Yeah.
and um, so tell us more about Comfort, Peace, and Freedom Foundation. I mean, what are the different things you guys offer? Well, if I go to sign up today, what am I gonna? What's the experience going to be like?
Yeah, basically, the foundation was created exclusively to bring that missing strategic planning component um, to the families of our fallen heroes. There's all kinds of great support out there, um, but almost every veteran support group, the great work that they do tends to solve a tactical problem, you know, paying off somebody's mortgage. That's the number one expense for most people. So taking that off of their need to find funds now that the potentially primary breadwinner is no longer going to be providing any financial resources, that is a huge thing. So we don't diminish that at all. What we look at ourselves is basically a force multiplier for that, or if they need, medical support equipment or whatever their need happens to be, our life planning will obviously, as they do that, they will identify one or more goals to achieve the vision for a joyful future, rather than in the case of the Gold Star families, they oftentimes can find themselves struggling to get through the 5 stages of grief or whatever you want to describe that process. But it is definitely a process. Um, and it is very difficult because of the sudden nature of what has happened. Dealing with death is never an easy thing. Even if somebody is, in their, 100 years old and they got every chronic disease you can think of, when their day of passing comes, it's still something of a surprise and shock and something to be dealt with by the people that love that person. And when it suddenly comes by way of that horrific knock on the door, where their world goes from being just on autopilot to that world doesn't exist and it's not ever coming back. And so that's why having this kind of strategic approach, an out plan, if you will, for the future to help them get through. And most importantly, realize that they can still and they need to have a joyful life, that remaining in mourning forever is not honoring their loved one. In fact, I'm sure, without trying to speak for the dead, that nobody that's suffering death in combat or a training accident or whatever, wants their family to be, just always constantly uh, feeling the loss, and it impacts their ability to move forward and enjoy the remaining time that they have on this earth. So that's the essence of the program, is to really be very, very narrowly focused on that group. Because it's a niche that doesn't really exist out there. I constantly keep looking to see if there's some other group that's doing what we're doing, to partner with them, not to compete with them. Um, and I have yet to see that. There's some that sort of talk about that, and you get into aspects of, well, there's a medical plan for those people that may have mental or physical issues that are maybe with them for life. Um, but it's not the holistic thing that we're talking about. And it's certainly not, in the case of the Gold Star families, what is sort of the lacking thing to
Okay.
help them as an additional resource to make sure they're getting everything that they can out of everything else that's being offered to them.
You mentioned looking for other organizations to partner with that do something similar to what you're doing. Um, are there specific organizations you do partner with to help bolster services and what have you?
Yeah, we actually, and it is because we have yet to find anybody that really is even remotely a competitor with what we're offering to the Gold Star families. Even on the for-profit side, there are, you can go online and find things about financial planning or, whatever, but there isn't anything that really has our soup to nuts totally, uh, you know, finances, health, spirituality, relationships, all of the key uh, facets of a person's life as defined by that person. Because everybody's facets of what's most important to having a joyful life aren't going to be cookie cutter. My facets aren't going to look exactly like anybody else's. And the program acknowledges that right up front so that people don't feel like, that they're trying to answer a test question where there's a predetermined, answer that they should be coming up with. They're the only ones that can evaluate what that answer is going to be.
Very nice.
Yeah.
What do you think, Keith?
No, it's yeah. I mean, it's definitely a needed service, and I'm just trying to envision like how. I mean, because it's such a delicate situation, as you said, right? And it's you're trying to help people along during a time of grief, and so for our listeners out there, that are gold star families that are maybe dealing with this kind of stuff, what what can they kind of expect, at least in the first initial contact when they reach out to you folks for help? How do you kind of onboard them and get things going?
Yeah, again, there is no cookie cutter, here's the 12-step, way we roll in, and here's the exact minute to minute schedule. Because basically each person, depending on where they are in that process, what other resources they have, what existing skill sets they have, so we start with where they're at. We don't roll in with well, you got to be at this baseline or the program's not going to work for you. We meet you where you are, not where we would like you to be. And so then we go from there. And fortunately, for example, I've been working with the FARS, the Air Force people that sort of are the remaining advisor person, help person. So we try and work with whatever remaining services and people that are still helping that Gold Star family to make sure that we're complementing and really optimizing what they're doing rather than, stand back, we got it now. That's not the approach at all. It's quite the opposite. It's very collaborative because they're a wealth of knowledge. They've been working with these individuals for X number of days, weeks, in some cases months, and their wealth of knowledge of how best to get things to resonate with that person so they can truly optimize this experience is invaluable. So step one is to basically do that homework before we even roll in. And then once we actually are working with them, it usually can be as simple as a couple of days where we break the program up essentially into day one, spending it on identifying the vision and the goals to support that vision. And then we can start talking a little bit about how you would achieve those kind of goals. And then the second half of the program are sort of um, add-on things. Obviously, every plan requires some kind of financial support. So there is a refining of the budget if they don't already have that from one of the other organizations that's out there providing support to that person or that family. And so there are other things that we can do. In fact, one of the things that I think ultimately, while it's one of the last things we talk about in the program on that second major day that we're physically in contact with the family, is the kickoff to the program, is Ken's idea of giving back. Everybody has time, everybody has talents. Not everybody has treasure, but when you really look at it, sometimes you can repurpose, that $5 cup of coffee that you drink every day to get at least some of that going in a different direction. So, and by looking at giving back to other people, that's often a way that people that are still working through this really uh, uh, tragedy can find a light at the end of the tunnel that they might not have otherwise thought of. Because, and especially given that everybody in good hearted ways are trying to help them, but in some ways, if it's like trying to get your child to ride their two-wheeler for the first time. If you're constantly hanging on to that back of the seat, they're never ever going to be able to do it on their own. And so you have to be careful, and sometimes you have to, accept a couple of scraped knees to get through to where they are now self-sufficient in that particular skill set. In this case, restoring a path to having a joyful life. So basically is almost a 2-day thing in general terms, and then based on circumstances, that changes to whatever it's going to take to be there. And then after they have the initial plan and the skill set, more importantly, to maintain that plan for perpetuity, then they may very well, I mean, we'll periodically check in, but they may very well not need a refresher course, even though it's available should they need it going forward.
Have you guys looked at or tried to, I don't know if partner is the right word, but join forces with like the casualty affairs offices and things like that as a resource that they can share? Um, I don't know how open they are being the federal government, but being a resource that helps Gold Star families, seems like a natural marriage that would, help get your resources in the hands of people who truly need it. Um,
Yeah, and actually, on both the for-profit side and the foundation side, sticking with the foundation mission, we will obviously partner with and have to when we're talking about, whoever is still in contact with the Gold Star family that's a military, in uniform kind of person. We have to work with them. We want to work with the chain of command. We see ourselves as a force multiplier for the chain of command to continue their support of that family forever. Because in some ways, that never is going to change. That soldier or airman, whatever, is always going to be identified as a member of that unit. And even if it's 20 years from now, 30 years from now, that person is still a very special and should be honored member of that particular unit. So we are a way to help be part of that bridging to the future, that doesn't cost them another hour of one of their service members' time, the commander's time. I mean, we basically can be a additional resource and extension what the command is already devoting to, and obviously wants to devote to, whatever it's going to take to help that family move forward with their lives. And actually, on
Fantastic.
the for-profit side, going back to actually the transition, we are in the early days of trying to find the path through big military to where every soldier leaving the military would have this as part of that official. It's on their checklist. They need to go through our program. They need to have their written plan for how they're going to accomplish this next mission checked off before they get to clear CIF or whatever, get their final ETS order. Um, because doing that, I think everybody can see the wisdom would dramatically reduce some of those that are falling through the cracks that are having problems transitioning out of the active military, regardless of when that's happening, first enlistment or after a 30-year career. It's still a shock for people, and there are people all the way along that spectrum that fortunately, most have great success stories or good success stories, but there's still some all the way up to, general officers sometimes, it's like, now what am I doing? You know, uh, it's tough to go from being a 3-star to being the greeter at Walmart. I mean, and if you're not careful, even people with that skill set might very well find themselves going like, okay, now what do I do?
Yeah, I remember we interviewed former sergeant major of the Army Grinston not too long ago, and I remember he talked about like that whole. He's like, you'd think that the sergeant major of the Army would get a better transition plan than I, but he was like, I turned in my CIF and I bye. It was like
That's
it
it. You
was
know,
just one day I was out. So
that's it. Thank you for
yeah,
your
no,
service. Good luck.
yep,
Um,
yep,
and
yeah,
everybody
yeah,
sort of assumes that the higher the rank you are, um, that the easier it's going to be. I would almost suggest that it might even be interesting to study to see whether that's true or not.
yeah,
Um, because in some cases, if you come out as a junior enlisted soldier, E3, E4, E5, whatever, um, with only 2 or 3 or 4 years invested in military, that you're much more open and able to adapt to a new environment as opposed
yeah,
to somebody who, is used to having people stand when they come in the room and yes, Sergeant Major, in some ways you've got to replace that, not that you're an egomaniac necessarily, but that's going to go away. And
yeah,
thank you for your service when you bump into somebody in an airport isn't necessarily going to fill that void all by itself. So
yeah,
it
100%.
would be an interesting study to see what the challenges are for people that you would automatically assume, well, they'll double dip or, they're going to get a great government contracting gig or, that their future is set.
Yeah,
In a lot of cases, it is because they're very good at planning. They do what we talked about earlier in the conversation, um, just instinctively. But some may roll up on the day after their parade. It literally has passed them by, and it's now like,
exactly.
now what do I do?
Yep,
So,
100%. Well, Dave, unfortunately, we are at time, so we got to wrap this up. But it was great having you on the show, and I loved hearing everything that I don't know if you guys go by CPF, but I'm going to call you CPF Foundation. But no, the Comfort, Peace, and Freedom Foundation, all that you're doing for the Ghost Star families is absolutely amazing. Before we go, though, how do people get in touch with you? How do they get in touch with the organization, either to partake in or leverage its services, and or how do they support the program?
well, beginning with the Comfort, Peace, and Freedom Foundation, more information and even make a small donation, you can go to veteransuccess.org. Um, to learn more about the life planning program for yourself or someone else that you think might be benefit of completing the program, you can go to Ken Rusk, that ends with a K, um, at kenrusk.com. So you go to kenrusk.com, you can find all the information about the program itself. Um, and then to get more than what you're going to get, obviously, on a website. My contact information is D Howe, so first initial Delta, Last name is HOWE at kenruss.com. So feel free to shoot me an email, and I will absolutely be glad to either schedule a call or answer specific questions, however best somebody would want to reach out to me.
Awesome. Well, thank you again so much for coming on the show, Dave. It's again, what you're doing for the community is absolutely vital and appreciated. And on behalf of the entire S.O.S family, we want to thank everyone for spending their time with us today. It's always great having you along for the ride. Don't forget to check out all of our other episodes and keep coming back for more stories, insight, and support from the Vet S.O.S crew. If you enjoyed this episode, give us a follow, share the show, and tell a friend or two. Toss your battle buddies, fire team, shipmates, and wingmen that flotation device that they need in transition so no one drowns in the sea of transition. And as always, grab the Vet S.O.S Lifeline.